This is the Maine State of Mind podcast. How's it going, everybody? I'm Justin, your host. We're back for another episode, another week. This week, we talk Hoppy Hour, which is one of our regular segments on the podcast. We invite Adam Morrisette of Dirigo Draft Services. He cleans draft lines, installs draft lines around the Maine and around the greater Bangor area mostly. We talk on a every 6 week basis basically about beer. And so today's subject is the most popular beer in the United States at the moment, the India Pale Ale, or IPA. Some people know it. We talk the variety of options there are in the IPA style. We talk some of the history of how IPAs came to be, where they're going, what we see. We talk a little bit about individual brands that might have an IPA, but mostly it's just a generic conversation about IPAs and beer in general. And that's what this week's episode is all about. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys enjoy listening to the podcast and watching it, please, 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 please subscribe on Apple and follow on Spotify. You can also subscribe on YouTube. If you're on Apple Podcasts and you like the podcast, if you can scroll down towards the bottom of our page and do a little 5 stars and rate our podcast, it helps very, 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 very much in the long run with the podcast. So I really appreciate it. So like, subscribe, share, do what you can to help promote this podcast. Really proud of it and really excited for see what the future is going to be. This episode, though, is Adam Morrisette of Dirigo Draft Services. It's Hoppy Hour, and we talk India Pale Ales, or IPA. I hope you guys really enjoy. If you're at home listening to it, crack a beer, enjoy one with us. If you're in the car, listen to it, and then go home and crack a beer. But I really hope you enjoy it. This is Hoppy Hour with Adam Morrisette. Enjoy, everybody. What's up, Adam?
How much? How's it going?
Doing well. I can see. We talked a little bit off air about my eye things, but I can see, and that's the big thing right now, right?
Yeah.
So, we've had a pretty, normal week last week with weather. Like we thought it was gonna be way worse than it was, and I was kind of looking forward to some snow, but it ended up being not as bad as it was. So it's one of those weird things where I'm like kind of happy I didn't have to shovel a lot, but kind of sad that this winter's gone by with not a little, just a little bit of snow falling. So. But what can we complain? We're healthy. We're living. We don't have COVID.
Exactly.
But hey, we're going to talk some beer. I'm going to open a beer, huh?
Yeah.
The effects of sound. There's funny things. I want to say that a couple things that my buddies and I have always talked about back when I was covering hockey was there's a couple of sounds in my life that are just like, exactly the sound. One of them, hockey, is the ping of a puck off of a goal net.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you hear that noise, you're like, that's the noise. I mean, I feel like if you don't know hockey at all, then obviously you won't know it. But if you watched a game before and that's happened, that's what happened. The other one to me growing up is the sound of skateboard trucks hitting a rail, or like when a skateboard does an ollie. To me, it's always been a sound that I'm like, okay, someone's skateboarding. And then the last one is when someone cracks open a can, no matter where you are or what time of day someone is, he goes, "Oh, starting early, aren't you?"
Yep.
It's always that thing. Asa opens a seltzer in the other room in the office. I'm always like, "Starting early, aren't you, Asa?" And he's like, "It's a seltzer." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." But normally with Asa, it's an IPA. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Because we make a few IPAs at Orna Brewing Company.
Just a few.
Makes a few IPAs. And now across the country, pretty much everybody makes IPAs. But yeah, so we're going to start. Adam and I do these podcasts to talk beer. As I mentioned in the post, if you're getting to this from the website, we don't do ratings. We both work close in the beer industry, whether we're serving or Adam has a number of clients that he cleans lines, or when Adam works for Orna Brewing Company, I work for Orna Brewing Company. Doing ratings is just not worth it because, first of all, I feel like we'd have a biased opinion on some of them. And then the other part about it is there's no reason to say something sucks because, let's be honest, there's not very many breweries in the state of Maine, at least, that do suck. So it'd be kind of hard to rate things when a lot of the breweries are pretty good. So we just decided let's just talk generically about beer on these episodes. And we decided we did Christmas beers, Thanksgiving beers, Christmas beers, and that we thought we'd get into this one and do a little bit of like an actual specific style and just talk, what makes this beer this style, what kind of types of that style there are. We can and we will probably bring up a couple of brands and types of beers just to give you an idea if you know what this beer is. And again, preface this a little bit. I work for one of brewing company full time. So there's probably, if we do make that style, I probably will relate it to one of our beers. It's just my life. So it's not because I'm saying they're the best at it, because we're not. It's just, easy for me to be like, oh, New England style IPA, tubular. That makes sense. So,
and you've got like 4 cases of it in your fridge.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The funny thing is like, when you look at our list, Adam has worked for OBC for a while too, there's a list at OBC in Orono, which people can't see because we're not open to the public, but that says our favorite beers. And when we did it, we realized that no one picked tubular. And so I was like, oh, that stinks. And then it made me think, do you think Van Halen likes to play Jump? Do you know what I mean? Like that aspect of, do you think, MC Hammer was Can't Touch This? Like, they all hate playing those songs. So I made it a rule from that point on that you can't pick tubular because we all like tubular. It's one of our classic beers. It's always around. We're never going to pick tubular because it feels like it's just part of our lives now. It's not a special thing. A lot of people will say that tubular is their favorite. So, but yes, I have a few cans of this, but mostly I take home other stuff because, again, I can have this whenever I want. So we're going to talk some IPAs. Before we get fully into it, no, let's actually, do you want to go over what an IPA is first? And then we'll go like what makes an IPA an IPA?
Sure.
Yeah. And then we can go further. I was just saying, when you tried your first IPA and so on and so forth. Not when, but like, do you remember what brand it was?
Oh man, my first IPA.
But do we want to start with what an IPA is?
So IPA, I mean, I think now most people have a pretty solid idea. So the gist of it is, I mean, you're coming out of the tradition of, English pale ales. And in the British colonial period, you're starting to see those being shipped from England out to the colonies. And so they're looking for a way to transport beer that'll stay fresh through the journey. And so one of the ways you can do that is increasing the alcohol. So you get a little bit higher alcohol. In the traditional IPA, it's not quite as of a high alcohol as it is today, but it was definitely higher compared to your like classic English bitter. And you put in a bunch of hops because hops have natural preservative properties. And so from the English bitter pale ale, you get this really hoppy, really high alcohol comparatively. I mean, now we see, triple IPAs and higher that you get into these crazy high alcohols. But at the base level, it's just, it's very hop forward. The traditional IPAs are much more on the bitter side, balanced out with a more malty base. And then, something that Justin and I probably have more than most people in the country is the New England style IPA or the hazy IPA. Those you get a lot more of the juicy flavors. And then there's just, the original IPAs that you probably came up on are much more like those traditional, the American IPA, but kind of the American version of the English IPA that still focus on those bitter hops. I mean, that's what I remember when I was first getting into craft beer. Like you said, the first one, I'm sure I had like an IPA, from like the local beer store from England. Yeah. And then the first American IPA that I really like is seared in my memory is Founder's Red's Rye IPA, which I don't even remember how long ago. And then that kind of got me on the IPA thing. Crooked Tree IPA out of Michigan was one of my favorites for ages. But now, God, since then I've had the traditional IPA is my favorite.
Mm-hmm. It's weird because I try to ask the question, then as you were talking, I'm trying to think of what I think mine even was. I think my first hoppier beer was Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, but like that's a pale ale. It's not the India Pale Ale aspect of it. Yep. So I think probably I would say 60-minute IPA.
That's
Dogfish. I would probably be up there, or even just Lagunitas, straight ahead Lagunitas IPA. So but those are those traditional. If you think about in America, when you talk about IPA, people kind of cringe over it up until more recently. It was that
Yeah.
idea that like, even if you ask my wife Taylor and say, hey, she tries something, goes, oh, tubular, not my thing, because she's not really into IPAs. But she's like, but it doesn't taste like I'm eating grass. And it's like those people who
Yep.
don't like IPAs a lot of times are confused. They're not confused, but don't know that there's a difference in IPAs now. And if I go over, I have a little list here on my computer to the side of the types of IPAs
Oh
there are
yeah.
right now. It's not a
There's a
simple,
bunch.
I don't like IPAs. It's the
Nope.
same thing where it's like Taylor's not really into a beer that we'll talk in a later podcast, sours. She would like specific sours, but doesn't mean you like all sours. There's a thing in
Sure.
there. And so with West Coast IPAs, what they started to do is transition those, or the types of hops and how they hopped them, into New
Yeah.
England style IPAs to make them more broadly accepted. I think that's really to make it so that more people probably liked it. And that's
Yeah.
what the hazy IPA, New England style, East Coast, whatever you want to call it, came into effect. And that's basically hopping at a different time, right? Like when you do a West Coast
Yes.
IPA, you hop at a certain part in the brew, which is
Right.
the boil or in the whirlpool.
You're doing it during the boil, and then you're doing your finishing hops, and then you still could be dry hopping. But like you said, the New England style is all about the dry hopping. I mean, there is hopping throughout the rest of the process, but
I would put money on the fact that there's some breweries out there who are putting absolutely zero hops in the boil and are just hopping in the.
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't doubt that at all. Yeah, because it really, like you said, I think that hang up for a lot of people is that bitterness. And, so you really focus on those like finishing and dry hops to just get the fruity kind of, tropical flavors that you're looking for. And so, yeah, I would imagine there are, or at least have very minimal hops.
I mean, I talked to my dad earlier this morning, and it was funny because he was like, he swears to this day that there still is fruit in tubular. Like he's just like, there's something about there's got to be fruit in there. I'm like, there's no fruit in there. And then we've had customers that aren't a brewing company. We're sitting at the bar, and the person's like, I can't have grapefruit with my heart medicine, and we're like, there's no grapefruit in there. I promise
I was
you.
just getting ready to say, Justin and I have a special person in mind that we both had many encounters with, but of all the stories of him, there was one where it was just forever like, I can't drink this through one pint. I can't have grapefruit juice. I'm on heart medicine. And I'd be like, yeah, I am too, but there's no grapefruit in that. I promise you. Yeah, but I can taste the grapefruit. Like, no, I promise you, man. Like,
and it's funny because like we sell that the beer we made recently, Ice Cream Social, with the peanut butter chocolate cream ale.
Yeah.
And it's like people are like, oh, but it tastes like peanut butter, but there's no peanut butter. It's peanut butter flavoring. There's such thing as flavoring out there that makes it taste like something that it ever is. There's no flavoring in an IPA or most IPAs. It's literally just the combination of the hops. And it's the same thing that what tea tastes different because you have different tea leaves in it. It's a similar, you can make a tea taste like peppermint and not have peppermint in it. It has to do with whatever tea leaves you have. Hops, the same thing. It's in the same family with hemp and marijuana. Marijuana has different smells for different things. It's just everything has different things for it. And that's the funny part about it. And some people just can't get it past it. And that's the benefit, I think, in some sense, that they've been able to make the IPAs. I mean, let's be honest, most West Coast IPAs taste, I would say, pretty similar. There are some that taste different, but with an East Coast or England, whatever you want to call it, I feel like there is this variation with how many hops are being put in whatever place or what hops you use, and grapefruits and melons and peaches and all this other stuff that makes it a more unique thing. But it's made it more accessible. And I think that's what's awesome about New England style IPAs is that I feel like there are definitely people out there, including my best friend Michael, who was a stout person through and through. And then he started drinking New England style IPAs, and now he drinks a nice West Coast type of IPA or Belgian IPA or whatever. So it's pretty cool that New England style IPA has been able to make it more accessible to people. And that's what's fun about New England style.
Well, I think something you just said is kind of spot on to what you're getting at in the beginning of, with the hops in New England. You're literally like, Asa could talk for days about it, that, you're really crafting the flavor with hops, where the traditional West Coast IPA, you're doing a lot on tweaking the malt side of it as well. And so that's why you have anything from like a lighter English style IPA up to these like crazy triple IPAs, but there's also black IPAs, and those all fall more on the West Coast side. So I think it's just not quite that focus on, crafting flavor from hops as you get from New England style.
part of me, when you look at the list, I mean, obviously you can consider every small nuance a different style of IPA if you wanted to, but like if you go through the list, I have a couple lists here. So there's New England style IPAs we just talked about. West Coast we talked about. West Coast was more the original American IPA was the West Coast IPA. So some people might see it as American IPA on a can or a bottle.
Yeah.
It's likely a West Coast IPA. If you see it hazy IPA, New England, East Coast, those are that New England, that more juicy style IPAs. But then you've got variations of that where you have the session version, which is the lower ABV, which nowadays can be anywhere from 2% to really, I mean, some people are calling 5.8, 5.5% IPAs, session IPAs, which
I know, it's crazy.
5-6% is an IPA, and now 7.5 is IPA. But then you got your double IPA, like we mentioned, or imperial IPA, which is usually higher alcohol content. Triple IPA, which is even higher. But then you get, like I said, black IPA. You have Belgian style IPAs. You have English IPAs, like you mentioned, which is more of the traditional IPA. Milkshake IPA when you add a little lactose to it, and then you can just even souring IPAs. So when you look
Belgian
at all that,
IPAs,
yes, when you look at that list, is it just people trying to take advantage of the IPA thing and put it in every category? I mean, that's what it seems like when someone's put milkshake in it or lactose in it, and when someone started souring it, it's like, okay, I'm trying to take this popular brand or this popular style and make it different. That's what it seems like, at least.
Yeah. Or it's just an excuse to get more hops into everything. We'll just call it an IPA version then.
Yes. And there probably is breweries, and I don't know any, I'm not going to mention any, that are sour IPAs because it did go sour on accident.
Or that.
and they and they call it that. But like at our brewing company, we made a milkshake IPA. We've done one. We've done technically a milkshake pale ale, if you want to consider Gratitude had a little bit of lactose in it. So there's that.
Right.
And a milkshake IPA is basically a New England style IPA that you just add lactose to. It makes it a little bit more creamy and smooth. And it's honestly, to some people, it's even more drinkable than a traditional New England style IPA. So it's like, again.
Oh yeah. And as always, as you imagine, there's a debate over that, like you said, the lactose, but I'm kind of like you said, I mean, it does change it. I mean, I there's a lot of them with lactose that I enjoy.
And again, it's a conversation I had with Jillian Farrell, who is Lady in the Tri-Clamp on Instagram, who works over at Grand Canyon Brewing in Arizona, that we mentioned that there's certain things that actually like what we relating it to that is that she was mentioning how the more people that are Instagram influencers about beer online, the more people are going to drink craft beer.
Sure.
Same thing. If you're going to make a style and make a successful beer that tastes good, that's going to get more people to enjoy the craft beer industry, do whatever you want. Like, I really don't have a problem with what you do. So if you add lactose to it and it tastes good and you did it right, and it's not, you're not trying to cover up for something or do whatever, great. It doesn't bother me because you're going to get that aspect of having someone that may not be interested in beer in the first place to try the beer. And that makes me happy. So like whatever style IPA you want to do it. Because that to me will get people to drink IPAs. And then again, hopefully that will give them to broaden their horizons and try, okay, from a milkshake regular New England style IPA to a New England style to a West Coast and so on, which is awesome for me because in the craft beer industry, I think that's cool. So do what you want. I don't care what that is there. But like black IPAs, there are not many of them. I'll tell you that many. I think it's one of those polarizing things. I think a lot of people, Asa wants to make one, but Abe doesn't like it. So it's like,
it's funny.
It's polarizing.
One of the big Twitter accounts I follow, I think it's Jeff Allworth, Beervana, and he hates black IPAs, and he was joking about that the other day. And it is like that's always what I see. And it's weird. It's less so with like just your average beer drinker, as like that's one of those I feel like that's within the industry, like people that do beer on whatever level, homebrewing or craft. Like that's where the black IPA debate is for some reason. People get angry about it.
I mean, and it's funny because there's a whole fundraising campaign called the Black Ale Project, which does most of the people in that thing do black IPAs because that's like you don't have to do a black ale. Like the idea now they've moved away from that, but like most people are like, oh, we're gonna do a black ale, we're doing a black IPA. And Maine Beer Company did one. I don't know if they regularly make it anymore, but Wheeze, WEEZ, they had a black IPA, and the first one I ever tried was Back in Black from 21st Amendment, and that was really good. That to me is like if you're stuck on IPAs and you want something that's a stout side of things, like go that way. Like that's the kind of thing. And it's like I would consider India Brown Ale from Dogfish Head on that borderline between a brown ale and a black IPA because of how
Oh,
hopped it
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely.
And so you have that aspect of it too. Black, like I said, it's polarizing. I feel like it's one of those things that you either don't like it or you like it,
Yep.
and I have no problem with them.
I absolutely love them. Like they're one of my favorite styles of beer. Which is like you said, and it was funny. There was like this little blip where there was like black IPAs everywhere, and then like a year later, you can't find them. And I'm still waiting all the time for like any of them. Founders used to make an amazing black IPA.
Uinta did one too. Dubhe, Dube, Dubhe. Yeah, they had one for a while. Uinta Brewing Company, too. But like, I don't know, black IPAs. It seems like it would be a kind of person like my buddy Mike who liked stouts and then moved to black IPAs. That would be if you like stouts and you want to go to IPAs, maybe that would be what you want to go to because it's a dark IPA. And it's really the only. I mean, Belgian IPAs are more more darker.
Yep.
And an English IPA would probably be a little bit more malty and darker, but it's really the darker of the side of the things is black IPA. But there are people who have tried. You mentioned black IPAs being West Coast style or American. There are breweries that probably have tried a more New England style black IPA, and I don't think it lands as well.
No, well, that goes back to what we were just talking about. It's that focus on that, the malty base with your West Coast and English IPAs that translates perfectly to a black IPA. I mean, I remember like way back in the right as craft beer was taken off, way before I'd ever had a black IPA. And I remember at the bar, we used to mix stout and IPA all the time, like at the end of the night to like make our own style of black IPAs.
And again, I'll mention it and say the word again. It's polarizing. It's one of those things you like it or you don't. There's no middle ground about that. It's the same thing with adding cherry to a beer. It's like people love cherries or they don't love cherries.
Yep.
The fun one I like to have now is whether or not breweries should start making triple IPAs. So let's go. I want to step back a second for it. Double IPAs are becoming the IPA, if that makes any sense. Like, whenever we do a collaboration now or in a brewing company with another brewery, I would say the conversation starts with, so we're making a double IPA, right? And then it moves to whether or not we should make a double IPA or not. But like it starts out 99.9% of the time that it's going to be a double IPA and we're going to move away from that. Or a brewing company as a company has never made a triple IPA. But a double IPA is one of those ones. It also makes me funny because there's no actual definition of what a double IPA is. Is there? It's usually classified.
Not with any crazy specifics.
No. I always say, in my mind, 8%. 8% is the minimum should be for a double IPA, in my opinion. Especially how your tubulars here. I've got a reciprocal from Bissell who is 7.3, 7.2. When your IPAs are 7.2, 7.3, we had Tiger Style at 7.4. Like when those are your typical IPAs for a brewery, you can't make a 7.8 double. Like
or that's triple. God, could you imagine? I mean,
so my thought is like, why? So there's no definition. So if I was to give it a definition, it's like that 8 to 9.2, like 8 to 9 is a double IPA.
Yep.
In my opinion, if you make a 9.3, 9.4, 9.5 and up, it's a triple IPA. I think there should be. I think, for a while there, New England style IPA wasn't a recognized style by the American. It was just IPA. New England style came in more recently. So there's no actual definition to a double IPA, but I feel like there should be. I feel like you have to hit marks. You should have to hit marks of 8% or below 9.5% or something. But OBC, we traditionally do 8.5. Like if you're going to see a double IPA for us on the market, it's traditionally 8.5, 8.4, 8.6, depending on what we do. Very rarely do you see us do something that's like 7, 8. I think the Zoo beer, what was it called? Don't Feed the Animals.
Yep.
That was a 7.8, 7.9 double IPA. But that was on purpose. But whenever I've seen people do 7.7 double IPAs, to me, it's like at that point, it's just an IPA. Just call it an IPA, call a spade, and move on. But what do you think? Do you think there should be something like that, like an actual definition to what a double IPA is? Or
I mean, it seems to have kind of found its own space, I think, because like you said, I would say that in like triple IPAs, I mean, I automatically assume around 10 to 11%, so I feel like I think they all just kind of get lumped under the like imperial IPA kind of.
I mean, does it really need to be such a thing as triple quad? I mean, is it like, do we have to go up
Well, I
that
think
far?
that's
Like,
the thing. I think the game has changed. It doesn't really matter now. Like you said, I mean, the thing is now you have, I mean, an IPA, say what tubular, that's what, 7.2?
7.2, yeah.
7.2. And, I mean, if that's a regular IPA, then we can get rid of double and triple. It's just, at this point, I think it's just how big do you want to make it? Because
calling it is something it sells it. And that's the sense, like,
exactly.
If there's people who have messaged us. There's one person in particular that messages us quite often and asks us about beers coming back and so on Facebook. And he just recently messaged us and asked us if we're to make a triple IPA. And, we don't have the idea in the future to do that. First of all, making an IPA with 10 to 11% alcohol taste good is not easy. Like there's a weird thickness, not thickness, but it's a weird consistency to them, syrupiness to most of them.
Exactly.
You taste the alcohol. It's just, I think double IPA is like the epitome, like I said, that 8.5 to 9% alcohol. If you're gonna make it, that's like where me personally, if anything above that, I'm just like, it's no point. I'll have 2 beers. Like, it's not really any point to have that high ABV. Calling it a double IPA on a shelf sells more.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
If you got a 7.8% alcohol beer and you're like, let's just throw that double on there and people will buy it. It's the same thing with, name me a beer on the market that is a New England style IPA that's not at least double dry hopped. Like, seriously, people, every New England style IPA you buy, I almost guarantee you is double dry hop. There's no point in putting DDH on anything or double dry hop on anything. I love my guys from Bissell a lot. And this is nothing against them, but this does say double dry hopped India Pale Ale on it. It says right here, double dry hopped India Pale Ale, 7.3% alcohol by volume. And it's probably because way back when they first made reciprocal, it was a big thing. Like, it was the thing they were doing. Now it's Tubular's triple dry hopped. Way Life Should Be triple dry hopped. I mean, we're all doing this. So it's like, it's one of those things that, like, when I see DDH or double dry hop now, I'm like, you don't need to put that on there. Same thing with double IPA. You can just put India Pale Ale on there, or there are other ones by Bissell that they just say ale. Swish just says ale. It doesn't even say IPA. It just says Swish Ale or Substance Ale. I feel like they have the ability to do that because it's Bissell.
I mean, I think ultimately it all just speaks to the fact that this is how quickly craft beer has grown. I mean, it's like, the styles and the like specifications for styles. I mean, even if you look at like the BJCP style guide, like, it's always behind on what's out there because there's so much stuff coming out. And it's funny, I've never really looked to see like big changes they've made, but it'd be interesting to see from them how they've updated styles like every so many years. Because like you said, I imagine, what used to be the general IPA category now is crazy. So I mean, now even saying American IPA or English IPA, which it was like, doesn't tell you anything really.
And again, what we did with Ozone, for example, when we launched Ozone IPA years ago, we put it as just IPA, India Pale Ale. That's what it is, Ozone IPA. When last time we released it in cans, we put West Coast on it because we needed to let our consumers know that it's not tubular. Like, if you buy it on the shelf, you need to know that it's more hoppy, or not more hoppy, sorry, it's more bitter. It's more, malty. It's not going to be that. What I will say about tubular, for anybody who's interested in IPAs, tubular has a great balance. And again, this is not me just working for Warner Brewing Company, because you can read it in the New York Times and all these other places, these publications. Has a great balance of West Coast versus East Coast, meaning there's a little bit of bitterness to that juiciness, which I think is a lot of other breweries have that either bitter or juicy. I think there's a nice mix that Ace has been able to do with tubular to have that. If you like West Coast, you might like tubular. If you like East Coast, you might like tubular, kind of thing. The one title that will destroy your beer, but love it for people in the industry, is the word session. Like, it's so insane if you put the word session IPA on a beer, how many people who are extreme double IPA drinkers won't touch the thing.
No.
But those people who are brewers or people who work in the industry love.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we're just like Saturday afternoon in the summer, I crush a whole 4-pack of the 3.5% alcohol. This is perfect light. Doesn't fill my stomach up that much. But then there's the people out there who solely drink double IPAs are like, oh, session IPA. To the point we stopped using that word at Owner Brewing Company. Like we don't use session on anything anymore.
It's right in like a nexus right now. I mean, now there does like all of a sudden there's like this seems to be this big interest in session IPAs and non-alcoholic options for beer. But like you said, but it's also not really how you want to lead with your beer. So like I don't know if that's gonna, how that'll go in the future. If maybe that will become a selling point. But yeah, right now it's definitely not.
I mean, Adam is a home brewer, avid home brewer for a number of years. He's working on more Cicerone stuff, and he's worked in breweries. He knows that a lower ABV beer, like a session IPA, is also gonna be lower calories because it's less in it. So it's almost more important, like what we did it over in a brewing company this past summer, was to call it a low cal IPA than to call it a session IPA.
Exactly. Yep.
Because you're going to sell to the consumers who want lower calories more than you're going to sell to someone that's less ABV. They don't care how much alcohol is in it, as long as there is alcohol in it, if there's less calories. But even if we didn't put low cal on it, a beer with 3.5% alcohol is going to have less calories than a beer with 7.2% alcohol, because the more alcohol is in a beer is because there's more grain in it.
Yeah.
So like there's going to be less calories in an ATP than there is in a tubular. It just is. But the recession, we realized that with Side Country a couple of years ago. Remember Side Country we did with a Hunker Down up at Sugarloaf? That was the last session IPA we did, and it if we would have just deleted that off the sign, it would have sold like hotcakes. But the second you call it a session IPA, it's like it has this stigma to it. And to me personally, I'm looking for that. If I go to a new brewery and I want to have a couple of beers to try their beer, I'm always like, okay, where's their session IPA?
Yeah, and I want to know. That's another one that's again outside of like if you're really into beer, like you say, either whether you're working a brewery or just a craft beer junkie, what session means. But like you said, but I think that's another one of those ones that then I kind of assume everybody knows what session means. And I think when you put even if they don't understand the alcohol, when you put session IPA, then it becomes something weird that they don't understand. Where you said, like, everybody knows what low cal means. Like you honestly would, which you wouldn't want either, but even just low alcohol IPA would probably sell better than session
IPA. And session is the idea that you can have multiple beers sitting in one section.
Yeah.
You can session.
But that's not a real American phrase.
I bet it would sell better if you put crushable on it.
Absolutely.
Like crushable IPA. I mean, you can have a few. Like you get all those people who know the word crushable. Like we use it as regular terminology. This tubular is crushable. That might sell better. But it's true. I mean, we got to the fact that it's like, I think OBC is going to do IPAs and double IPAs. That's what we're going to do. Like, that's the decision you have to make. Is like, if a beer has the IPA style put to it, no matter what the ABV is, below 8%, it's an IPA.
Yep.
Make it over 8%. If it even gets up to 9.2, 9.3, 9.5, it's probably still going to be a double IPA for Owner Brewing Company, because I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we make it 10% or 11%. I just don't think it's in our wheelhouse. I don't think people have to.
I think that goes back to the point you were making originally, though, which is like I don't think that those names matter that much anymore. Like you said, I think double has a meaning to people. They love it. They buy it like crazy. So double almost, I mean, everybody knows it means higher alcohol, and it usually means that it's less frequently made. I think that's the other thing. It's like anytime they see a double, that's a special beer.
Do you know why it's called double?
As far as I mean, it really has to do with like the grain bill. So like because like we said, consumers are always like, oh, that means double the alcohol, and it's like, well, no, it's like it's a it's grain bill, and therefore, I mean, but not necessarily double. I think it's just it's the closest to approximating like this higher alcohol beer takes double the grain, or.
And that's one way I've heard it. The other way I've heard it is that Imperial IPA is actually the real name of it, and so it's double IPA.
Well, exactly that.
But it's also funny when someone puts Imperial, like they're like, I want to call it an Imperial IPA. And again, I feel like it comes down to consumers and whether or not they know what that means. And so double IPA is probably going to sell faster and better than an imperial IPA because no one's
Yeah.
going to know what an imperial IPA is.
Well, and because they get kind of their own meanings to people themselves. So I think the thing like, you know, an imperial IPA, like, yeah, you could maybe say that, you know, this beer, yeah, it's an imperial, you could call it a triple, whatever. But with imperial now, people that think like it's really special. Like they expect it to be like very expensive, maybe to get a single bottle of it. So now, like you said, you probably could call a number of like, may say triple IPAs or doubles an imperial, but you'd kill your sales because people aren't not going out and buying just 4-packs of like super high alcohol imperial.
And I normally associate now imperial with stouts. Like,
yeah.
you know, the imperial stout is the idea. The imperial stout is the double IPA of the stout, you know, style. Your imperial stout, your double IPA. That's what I would put in that categories of that. Most of Maine is New England. Like, obviously, we're in New England. Let me correct that. All of Maine is in New England.
Yeah.
Just your geography majors out there. All of Maine is in New England. Most of Maine's beer scene is the New England style IPA.
Yes.
There are a few breweries that continue to do different styles because of what they would, you know, what they want to go, how they want to go. Airline Brewing Company in Amherst, Maine, and in Ellsworth, they do their English IPA. So if you go in there expecting something that's like juicy or even bitter, it's a more malty than it is any of those two. And I'm using these. We are based in the Bangor area, so I had a couple lists of breweries I'd like to shout out that are in this area. You have your OBC, your Masons, Bangor Beer Company, Marsh Island. Those breweries, Mass Landing, Bissell. Those are the breweries in the state of Maine that mainly do we do New England style IPAs. That's our styles. And you got someone like Gagan's.
That's who I was getting ready to mention.
Maine, is a West Coast style brewery. They do dabble in New England style here and there, but they are adamant in filtering beer and making sure that's bitter and using specific hops and so on. And that's good for them because then they give someone an option for local beer who wants that. And they have a following. Like I am a Mug Club member there because I grew up with Andy, and Andy will be on the podcast in March and we'll talk some stuff about Gagan's. And he does what he does because there's a market for him. And that's why he does that. He also knew that that's his traditional IPA is a filtered West Coast style IPA.
And it's still that's still the IPA that's dear to my heart, is like the classic filtered West Coast style IPA. I mean,
and we live in New England, so I feel like I am inundated with New England style IPAs. But let's be honest, we're a small part of this country. There still is probably, I would consider, and I don't have any facts or statistics, but there's probably either an equal amount of both styles, or if not more West Coast style IPAs still in this country than there are even New England style IPAs.
Yeah, so I'd say there's probably way more West Coast overall still.
And because if you there are those breweries, but here's the deal: your hipster, popular, Instagram, social media loving breweries are your New England style IPAs. Because it's part of the brand in that aspect. And so we have New England breweries like Vermont, Teddy Topper, Alchemist, the Alchemist.
Yes.
You have your tree houses and your Trilliums and Thistles to thank, really, for the boom of the New England style IPA. Those are the breweries that really bred what we have right now. And I really, it goes back to the Alchemist, really. I mean, the Alchemist was the one that was on the can, says drink from the can. And I still to this day think that it has nothing to do with it tastes better in the can, is that they didn't want you to see what it looked like because they were afraid that people seeing it unfiltered would not want to drink it. And they'd look at it being a dirty beer when the truth of the matter is it was what the style was. Now you cannot make a New England style IPA unless you can't see through it. Like,
oh God, no.
If you can see through your New England style IPA, a lot of people who are fans of New England style IPAs won't even give it a time of day. So it's an interesting way that's come, because nowadays I feel like if you don't make a New England, if you're opening a new brewery in New England and you don't make a New England style as one of your first beers to come out, you're going to struggle.
Oh yeah.
It's just the way it is, because people are going to expect that. Go ahead, make a West Coast style IPA at some point. But if Gagan's I love them. Again, Andy's a good buddy of mine, and he's coming on later on in the month of March. If they tried to open in 2022 with their brewery, with the style they're doing, they may not be as successful as they are now.
Yeah.
Because they were able to open as one of the first breweries in the greater Bangor area into that beginning boom in the Maine area for breweries. And they were able to do it with West Coast IPAs. And that's why I think they've been able to continue doing West Coast, is because they have a following now. They have people who want that beer.
Yep.
They sell a lot of beer in northern Maine, which hasn't had a beer industry following in a long time. So it's like they have the ability to do it. They make, for West Coast IPAs, they make great IPAs. Like that's like, if you want that in Maine, get that. If you like the New England style IPAs, there's you can almost throw a rock and get to one now. There are ones like Gagan's you have to actually
walk into your closest gas station and you'll find 20 of them. Like
it's insane. And the funny thing about it is there's even companies like Sam Adams and I can't think of other ones right now off the top of my head, but have the words, but they've used the word hazy on it.
Yeah.
Because they want you to know.
Sierra Nevada. Yep. They have hazy little, their hazy little thing, right? I think. Yeah.
And it's funny because it's not as hazy. Like hazy little thing is a cloudy. I hate the word cloudy because it feels negative, but it's a filtered beer that you think would be filtered that has a cold haze to it, if that makes any sense. Like it's like the haze on the outside of the glass is making it look cold or hazy. It's not like a Bissell or a Trillium or a Treehouse. It's not that you cannot see through it kind of haze. But with Trillium, like I said, some of these breweries, it's insane. I don't want to get too much into individual breweries, but like Treehouse sells hundreds of thousands of barrels of beer a year from one location. They do not distribute. There's times where you can buy a can, like one can of a beer. It's insane. And they wouldn't have been able to do it without the boom of New England style IPAs. But they were actually part of the beginning part of that too, though.
Yeah.
But like I said, so we talked about the styles, West Coast, East Coast, New England, I mentioned filtering, but we didn't mention at the top. If someone doesn't know about beers too, you normally would filter a West Coast style IPA, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
You would not filter a New England style IPA because it would kind of defeat the purpose of it.
And I feel like it's the reverse of what you just said too, which is like if you handed somebody, who's a big West Coast IPA fan and we're like, hey, this is a West Coast, but it's cloudy, they would be like, yeah, no. So yeah, it is like.
And we talked to Fraz, our distributor, so our brand sales manager for Craft Distributing of Maine, which is our distributor for our brewing company. We asked about ozone. I mean, the easiest way for us to make ozone would be to use A72 or any of the yeast that we're using for tubular, because it's in-house. We can reuse it. So if we were to do a West Coast style IPA, we have to buy a different yeast, which is going to cost us a bunch of money to do, and we make one beer with it. We used to, and people ask us, why don't you make this anymore? And that has something to do with it. Is because when we used to make Kolsch on a regular basis, Kolsch and Lightning Tree, for an example, was our West Coast IPA, like our flagship. Those use the same yeast, but neither one of those beers use the same yeast as tubular, which is what we use the most. And so we had to buy a separate yeast package for that beer. So that's one of the reasons why those beers aren't made as much, is because we can't use that yeast over and over again, which makes the beer way more costly than it actually needs to be. And so we don't make Lightning Tree or ozone anywhere nearly as much as we used to. That being said, we thought, well, maybe we can use the same yeast as tubular in ozone and use some biofine agent in it and maybe like drop that yeast a little bit, but it wouldn't get clear. That's the problem. And we said, well, can we pass it off as a West Coast IPA? And we're like, as a discussion, it's like, it's not possible. You could not pass ozone off as a West Coast IPA if it had any haze to it. It needs to be clear. It needs to be that same look of every IPA that you see in the West Coast. It just needs to be. There's no question. Like, you cannot make a haze. You could, in a sense, you could make a beer that's less hazy taste like a New England style IPA, but you can't make like the opposite. It's like a square is a rectangle, but rectangles in a square, or the opposite. You can't make a West Coast IPA an East Coast IPA, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But hold on, let me have a little drink here of my tubular. So if you had to drink if they gun to the head, this is the only style IPA you were allowed to drink for the rest of your life, you'd pick West Coast?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
And is there a particular one you go for usually now?
Man, I'm trying to think. Recently,
and I'm saying IPA,
changed.
and I don't know if we'll ever do an episode that's based around pale ale specifically. I feel like
Right,
we did IPA
right.
and it consistent. So like to me, it's your Sierra Nevada pale ale, like we talked about. It's Celebration during Christmas, like we talked about in the Christmas episode. And honestly, one of my favorite beers that Sierra Nevada's ever created is Torpedo.
Oh God, I love Torpedo.
That would probably be my go-to one. That's
I mean,
like,
I would take that as my one beer that you can have. If I mean,
maybe 90 minute, or no, not 90 minute. Yes, 90 minute from a Dogfish Head.
Yep.
Or what's that one they make with a grape must?
Oh,
is that an IPA? 67? Right, 67 is what it's called.
Yeah, it is an IPA.
That one is like, that one's fun. I think we'll do a tradition of every Hoppy Hour podcast we do that I'm going to bring up 67 on every single, because I feel like I have on every single one so far, and in the future.
I think so. We both, Joe. I mean, we both, not us alone, a lot of people, but like our craft beer experience, like Dogfish Head is like at the forefront of like all of it. I mean, I think back to early craft beer, like it was pretty much every time I tried something new and was like, oh my God, it was Dogfish Head.
And part of that, I mean, I will say part of that is, let's be honest, it was the TV show on Discovery Channel did incredible amounts for that brewery. I think the reason they merged with,
yes, I agree,
with Sam Adams, it has, if you look back, they went like this, like they were like growing, and then like they were on Discovery Channel and they just went straight up. And I still, to this day, I tweeted it out years ago, why they didn't just immediately move it over to something like Netflix. Because the reason they got canceled was because of big beer like Budweiser and Miller, who were the number one advertisers on Discovery, saying, if you continue airing this show, we're going to pull our advertising, because they were afraid of losing money. If they went over to something like Netflix that has no advertising or nobody to tell them what to do, they could do a show about whatever they wanted to and do it. So I thought if he would have just merged over to Netflix, that show would probably still be on air today. They would have been documenting the merger with Sam.
God, they probably could go back on air today, and just the level of excitement of them coming back. Because I'm like, you mean anybody that was really big into craft beer in those early days, like that show was huge. I mean,
and they didn't air. There's still one episode that never aired, and that was when they were opening their restaurant in New York City. It was on one of the skyscrapers at one of the top of the buildings. They were opening the restaurant, and they never actually aired that. Part of me goes, I don't even know if that restaurant ever opened or whatever, but like. Part of me goes, if it isn't open, maybe they didn't air it on purpose, because they're like, okay, it was a failure, let's move on. But like,
well, right.
But like the idea that there was the stories and the traveling behind it, it was a mixture between a food show. Like there's a new one on CNN with Stanley Tucci, who's going to Italy. I don't know if you've seen that advertisement or not. I'm working from home, so I'm watching a lot of CNN lately. But they have it's like a food show where you're visiting these places, because he was visiting places and trying crazy historic beer recipes, like the chewing of the corn and spitting it into the thing, and those kind of things. Who else had one on? They were on History Channel. Oh, Dark Horse Brewing in Michigan had a beer show on. I think it was the History Channel. But it makes me think and laugh that
that's the one I told you earlier when you asked my like favorite IPA. I was like, probably Crooked Tree is my like, that's Dark Horse.
And Dark Horse did some crazy things too. Like they had that beer festival every year at their brewery where they they used things, they poured beer over bacon and stuff. And it was like, and that made me try Dark Horse. So I feel like there's weird that there's not more. You don't think that beer industry folks would watch a movie about Treehouse or Chester King?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's gotta be a brewery out there that would sign on to do a show on Netflix about this. Like, I'm surprised the craft beer industry has grown so much in the last number of years that there's been less TV shows on TV about beer than there were years ago.
I don't even know now that I'm thinking about it, like in the moment, like I'm kind of shocked that there's not some big show on one of the streaming services that goes like to all the breweries. And because I'm thinking like, I watched a show the other day called Bong Appetit where they cooked with marijuana. Like, why are there not brewery shows?
There was a show on a TV channel on Roku. Roku has their own channels called, now I can't remember the name of it, but it was a African American dude who traveled around the country, who was like a level 4 or whatever, the high level cicerone. Used to work in the beer industry and stuff like that. And he used to travel to different breweries. Like
Garrett Oliver.
I think I don't remember, but it was on Aura. I don't think the channel's available anymore. But it was only on streaming, and it was cool because he would talk to the breweries, and a lot of the breweries had restaurants attached to it, or a restaurant that used their beer in their recipes. Yes, and so he'd talk to the brewery, he'd brew with them, and then he'd go cook with them. Go ahead. Do you have it right there?
No, I'm just looking. Yeah, Garrett Oliver.
Yeah. And so it was a fun show. And again, it was like the last remaining of those. And then the channel got canceled, I believe. But I feel like I would watch a show on Bissell. I'd watch a show on Trillium or on Treehouse, or go back and do The Alchemist, because I feel like what you need to do is a show like on Oxbow, someone who has they do weird things with beer, or like Jester King, or some sort of things where you like barrel aged beers for a long time, or something like that would be fun. Or find a brewery that's expanding to a new location, so you have that storyline. But I feel like it seems weird with the amount of channels that we have at our fingertips that don't rely on advertising, that rely on someone's monthly payment. I'm surprised there hasn't been something.
No.
It really surprises me. And now that I say that, next week we're going to get an announcement that Dogfish Head's back on TV with the Brewmasters, because there's only 7 episodes of that series?
I think so, yeah.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. But so IPAs are the most popular beer style in the United States right now, by far. I think the only one that's catching up is sour ales. I think that's the one that people are more, again, it's the same idea I have about New England style versus West Coast, is that when you introduce things like kettle sours, the fruits in them and stuff like that, that has also you've seen it at Orono Brewing Company, the amount of college students who come in who will drink a fruitful because it doesn't taste like beer to them.
The younger crowd seems to really love the sours.
So I haven't mentioned this to Adam, but I think next episode we're gonna talk sours. I think that's a fun one too, because of the fact that, again, there's the kettle sour aspect of it, there's the barrel age aspect of it, there's the more international aspect of sours. There's not just we basically talked about American IPAs or American beers. Sours are historical. They're way more science-based than even regular beer. You don't just sour a beer on accident. It's purposely done. It's scientifically done, and so on. But I think I wanted to start off with IPAs on this because it makes sense, because IPAs are the most popular beer in the world right now.
I think you're legally required to start with IPAs. So,
and to the point where they're so widely wanted nowadays that even things like, it's hard to see with my lighting, but Run Wild, or Adam had one earlier, Freeway from Athletic Brewing Company, that is a non-alcoholic IPA. I have one last quick question before we start to wrap this thing up, Adam. Is there a reason why is it just because of popularity? Do you think, you might not have the answer, why non-alcoholic IPAs are mostly West Coast style? Haha, gotcha.
Yeah.
He's speechless. I mean, don't you think that if you created a non-alcoholic IPA, you'd want to start off with something? I mean, I guess this company, especially this company, wasn't this company started in Connecticut or something?
Yep.
And so wouldn't you think that they started, if they're in New England, that they would start with a New England style IPA instead of something more malty and bitter?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm wondering if it's
the Freeway has a little bit of a New England thing going on.
Here's my question. I mean, you don't know the answer. Every brewery does it differently, but is this something where they brewed the beer and then removed the alcohol, or do they brew it at a low enough alcohol content? Like, how do they make a non-alcoholic beer?
I mean, a lot of the non-alcoholic beers out there, I mean, they can just brew them to that a low amount. It's really, but you're right though. I mean, a lot of now we're seeing like the 0.0 beer is becoming a big thing. And that is a process where they remove the alcohol from the beer. I'm guessing, and I don't know enough about it, so don't anybody take this as my answer.
I sprung this on you. It wasn't a planned thing.
But I'm guessing that the technology to take the alcohol out of beer makes it pretty prohibitive for any small brewers. And that's why the true zero beers now are like Heineken, Budweiser. There's a Belgian company that's making some now. But
But I
yeah,
mean, with the removal of the alcohol, is it more of a filtering base? So if you did a New England style IPA, that it might actually ruin the actual style? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm wondering if that.
I that's the limit of my knowledge about it.
But
I
I'm
would,
guessing,
yeah.
I'm just spitballing that the idea would be that it's a lot harder to do it because there's a lot more like, I think a lot of people just think it's the yeast that has something to do with the New England style IPA, but it has something to do with the reaction of the hop oils and all that stuff that makes it that hazy. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it that makes it a little bit harder to do, or they're just trying to get that wider. We're making very limited number of beers. Let's try to get the wider aspect that more people drink West Coast than East Coast. So might
That's a
also
good
just make it
question.
West Coast.
No, it's an interesting question because like the one I just had, the double hop is 0.5% alcohol, and it was really hazy.
Okay.
But all of the 0.0 that I've seen are clear.
Yes, and they're mostly. I mean, all those ones are basically mostly pilsners and stuff, right? I mean, they're not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They're like I said, I think Leffy, which is I think is still AB InBev that out in Belgium, is a Belgian style ale that they're releasing 0.0 now. So there's a little variation, but they tend to be those more like golden ales, lightly hopped. So yeah, I don't know, but I'll look that up.
I took this home from Orna Brewing Company because we have it in stock for purchase as well, because we don't make a non-alcoholic beer. We started with the golden ale, and I just like it felt like to me it was like if it's going to be more of a broader range of people who want an IPA drinker will drink a golden ale. And I got so many responses being like, why don't you have the IPA? The IPA is really good. And I was like, okay, let's get it. So we ended up getting it. They are definitely a reputable company. Like, I tell you what, I'm not trying to sell Athletic, but like Athletic, we had an issue with one of their beers. I'll be up front. It definitely was oxidized in the can, and they immediately fixed the problem. So I will say they immediately said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. There was a production issue. Here's some new beer. And they replaced the beer for us. So I will say, again, not selling them, but I was disappointed in the fact that I got some oxidized beer from them, but they fixed it and they were owning up to it. It wasn't I wonder if it was this, that, or no, they're like, nope, we had an issue. Sorry. Some of them slipped through the whatever. And so here's some new ones. So I'm glad they were able to fix that. And I want to give them credit for that. And that's why we'll continue to selling them at Orna Brewing Companies because
they make good stuff too.
Stand by. And I will tell you to this day, I do not drink beer to get drunk. I tell you right now, there is a part of me who likes the idea of, depending on the occasion, to have a little extra beer to make yourself feel good. But I like the style and the history and the science behind beer, and that's why I continue to drink beer. So why would I drink a non-alcoholic beer when I like to drink regular beer? It's because I like to
I drink non-alcoholic beer all the time.
It's better than drinking soda, in my opinion. This right here is less sugar than soda, so non-alcoholic beer.
And to get away from the craft one, I'll tell you a bunch of them I've had. The Heineken 0.0 that just started going around is by far one of the best non-alcoholic beers I've had.
I'll have to give it a shot. Maybe we should do an episode on trying some non-alcoholic beers.
It'll be fun. Let's do that, and then I can actually look up and see how all these different processes work, because that's something I don't know at all. So might be interesting.
I definitely think I have it on the schedule, doing some behind the scenes stuff that I want to do sours next. I think it'd be fun.
Yep, I agree.
Crack open some bottles of Everlasting Farm. I think we could do some Oxbows, some Allagashes because we're from Maine. But again, you can talk about those breweries like Chester King and some of those international breweries as well, to talk about some of the sour. They take a lot longer to make, most of them, than an IPA does. So they're pretty fun. But in the future, we can try the non-alcoholic beers. We can try different things in general. Excuse me. It's one of the benefits of having beer on a podcast episode. You burp a lot. But yeah, so I think this is fun. IPA. So if you want to try something that's new and you're fearful of, you had IPAs in the past and you want to try something, if it says New England style IPA on it, or it's from a brewery in New England, you're likely to get a New England style IPA. We recommend, obviously, working at Orna Brewing Company. Orna Brewing Company, most of our beers are New England style IPAs. But Mass Landing, you got your Bissell's, all those places. Bandit, I wear a Bandit horn or Bandit Brewing shirt. Those guys all make New England style IPAs as well. I don't want to name off too many because I don't want to leave anybody out. But if you want a West Coast, if you're going to drink a West Coast and you're from Maine, give Gagan's a shot. They're over in Brewer.
That's where I go.
I think they're great. They're great people. They are one of the peoples who helped boom the Bangor beer industry for sure.
Yep.
And they even helped us move in, or Orner Brewing Company's original location. The guys from Gagan's came over and helped us move our tanks in. So that's the kind of industry we love to work in the beer industry. And then we'll do other ones. I honestly, Adam's worked at bars for a number of years. Adam was my lead bartender for a number of years as well. I'm general manager. I'd love to do one that's more of the serving side of things too.
Yeah, totally.
So look forward to that too as well, and not get into a specific style, but like tastings and tours and the whole industry of selling beer. And then maybe we'll get like Uriah on or something like that to talk, who's our head chef at Orner Brewing Company.
That would be very fun.
Cooking with beer and
that'd be
like
really
that.
fun.
We've got some future things coming up. I really am excited to do this stuff. I think now that we got past the holidays, we can go into like more in depth. And I'd love to do one with science behind it. Justin Amaral, who works for Maniacal Yeast Labs, could talk the science behind yeast and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We've got future episodes that are really cool. I think I'm excited for 2021. This is the first Hoppy Hour on the new name of the Maine state of Maine. So we're going to focus a lot on Maine, but it's where we live and where we love. So if you need your draft lines cleaned, call Adam.
Yeah, give me a call.
He'll come clean some draft lines. He just did OBCs with the hope that maybe one day we'll open that.
One day we'll be open. I know. I was thinking about that when you said about the cooking episode. I was like, let's save that until we can actually all be together and cook.
Well, I mentioned that too. And it's like, I did this podcast starting it in May of last year. And when I started this podcast, I was like, you know what? Not too long from now, we're going to be able to do this in person. Yep. Was I naive or what?
How long ago was it that you and I were like, well, the next one we probably can at least go downtown to the OBC tap room and sit like a few tables down from each other. That was like 6 months ago.
And so that, speaking of that, when we get to the fact that we can actually sit near each other and do this, what I do want to do is a fun episode where we do a blind taste testing, which would be kind of fun. Make us both look like idiots. We'll have a third person involved in
Absolutely.
it. Say we'll know what breweries are involved. We'll know the list that we can pick from, so we're not just arbitrarily picking. But do a New England style IPA taste testing and see if we can guess the beers that correlate with it. But we have to be in person to do that. We can't do that from a distance.
No.
Together to do that. So, but yeah. So this has been Hoppy Hour. IPAs. Adam, I really appreciate it. I love to promote. Usually, I promote Adam's social media or people's social media on this podcast. But Adam is really absent from social media, so we're not going to do that.
I'm on Twitter.
Oh, you are on Twitter, but
I am on Twitter.
You could also go to Dirigo Draft Services, find it, Google search it. He's working on that stuff. I hope, once we get to open back up again, Adam will come to clean your draft lines for sure. Adam has a lot of experience in the beer industry, and I'm really excited to have him on here. And I'm looking forward to future ones for sure. But cheers, Adam. I don't know if you have any beer left.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you next time. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Best of luck, man. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too.